As I was saying, overall the Bloc Québécois is satisfied with the principle behind Bill C-12 and commends the government's intentions. Nevertheless, several questions still remain. In particular, that of resources, but also the issue of processing times for asylum claims, which, let's face it, are more than problematic. I find it difficult to understand how, after having analysed the bill, these delays will be reduced. I've quickly realised that what the government was really doing through C-12 was to transfer the influx of applicants from one place to another and getting away with it by saying, well, we've solved the problem. In actuality, the officials who process asylum claims and those who analyse pre-removal risk assessment applications have different trainings. And this was mentioned at committee, Mr. Speaker. Given that the trainings are different, the volumes will probably just be transferred from one processing centre to another. So, the overall volume won't change, but will just be part of a shell game. So not only will the overall volume remain unchanged, but on top of that, processing times will skyrocket as there will likely be a shortage of staff that have already been trained in pre-removal risk assessments, so who will be unable to process these applications. My other concern, Mr. Speaker, obviously has to do with the spread of asylum seekers. It's not normal that asylum seekers arriving in Montreal find themselves immediately without housing because we don't have the means to accommodate them properly. Meanwhile, there are provinces elsewhere in Canada that are doing absolutely nothing. They're not pinching in to help accommodate these asylum seekers. And let me remind you that last year, the former Minister for Immigration, the member for Ville-Marie, who is now the Heritage Minister, announced with great fanfare that he was going to form a committee and that he was going to organise the distribution of asylum seekers from coast to coast to coast. There was so much fanfare. There was a press conference with immigration ministers from around Canada, provincial ministers that were there with him. The federal government was so proud to say, we've finally found the solution. Since then, absolutely nothing. We've not heard anything more about it, and the Liberals have never proposed any solutions. Mr. Speaker, as I said, it's highly illogical. We do agree with the general principle of C-12. It's an attempt by the government to respond to the Bloc Québécois' priority demand to remove the 14-day clause contained in the Safe Third Country Agreement with the United States of America that created a loophole that was exploited by smuggling networks. However, C-12 does not address the 14-day clause in the right way, and the real impacts of the proposed trade-off solutions are difficult to assess.
Quite frankly, I think that the networks that are exploiting migrants today will still be able to do that after C-12 is passed. Quite simply, the Safe Third Country Agreement should have been revisited as requested by the Bloc so that this provision could finally be removed and the exploitation of vulnerable people at the mercy of smuggling networks could be stopped. So the 14-day period, Mr. Speaker, I don't think people understand how much that is exploited by smuggling networks, that loophole. There are people who help migrants on both sides of the border, and they say because of that 14-day period, smugglers can use that because before they were just charging money to get people across the border, but now they add a clause to the contract, if you will. They say, we'll get you across and then we'll hide you for 14 days. And once you've been hidden for those 2 weeks, then you can make a refugee claim. And what that means is, the consequence of that, Mr. Speaker, is that those people who've hidden for 14 days, they hide. They're at the mercy of the criminal smuggling gangs for those 14 days. They can't come out of hiding because at that point their claim might no longer be valid, their refugee claim. So they stay in hiding for fear of undermining their refugee claim. So they break the law by coming in and then they hide for 14 days in order to comply with the law. So they cross in an irregular manner. They hide for 14 days. They hide for 14 days in a basement. And once they've done that, then they can file a legal refugee claim, a legitimate refugee claim. So what G7 country would say that's a good idea, that what government will call on people, ask them to break the law so that they can comply with the law. It makes no sense.
And first off, I have to recognize that with the Bill C-12, there has been a much higher sense of cooperation coming from all sides of the House. And that's encouraging because what it does is it does make our borders that much more secure. We would, even though many of us would like to see other aspects of our government legislation pass through, I do recognize the sense of cooperation that's taken place here. The member made reference at the beginning of his comments in regards to the RCMP and border control. The Prime Minister and this government, the Liberal caucus as a whole, has been very clear of 1,000 RCMP and 1,000 border control. That is a commitment that we've made, and we will, in fact, materialize on that. There are some hurdles that have to be overcome, and those will be overcome, Mr. Speaker. And I'm wondering if the member has anything else he would like to add specifically with respect to the RCMP and the border control.
The honourable member for Lac Saint Jean. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, there's two things. First of all, the CBSA union is saying that they're short 2,000 to 3,000 officers currently. So that union says that the government, in an administrative way, it doesn't even have to be by legislation, they could give CBSA the power to patrol outside the border crossings. And then there wouldn't have to be so many RCMP officers doing that patrolling job because CBSA could do it. And it could be done through administrative means, not legislation. So there are things the government could do now and isn't doing. And the union representing CBSA is calling on the government to take those steps, which the government could do right now. And the department, the minister and the deputy minister, no, we won't do that. So it's a shame that the government doesn't realize how much they could do without even using C-12, and they could quickly change the situation for the better.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I want to thank my colleague from Lac Saint Jean for all the work that he does on behalf of persecuted peoples from around the world. His work at the Immigration Committee, Public Safety, and in other venues in this place. His knowledge of the bill and his effort is obviously evident from his speech. The question I have for him is this: would he comment on the fact that C-12 arises from an original bill tabled in this Parliament way back when C-2 as part of a large omnibus bill? Would he comment as to how this place operates efficiently? We're now to a point where there is some cooperation around this place. But this was the ideas of reform here were initially introduced through a large omnibus bill. Does he think that's a good idea when a government says they wouldn't do that? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
L'honorable député de Lac Saint Jean.
The honourable member for Lac Saint Jean. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to say how much I appreciate my colleague. I've sat with him. He's a hard worker for the right reasons. Even if our visions are sometimes different, we are able to cooperate and move things forward. So yes, the government, since it's been in office, now they're a minority government. They seem to forget that. They act like they're a majority. Just look at the bills they've tabled since they took office. It's as if they thought they were all-powerful, but they have to work with the opposition. And we're able to do that. We can. We did it on C-12. Without my Conservative colleagues, C-12 would not even be where it is today. It's because we made changes, we cooperated, and we did it thinking of the people who will be affected by C-12. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Questions and comments? The honourable member for Rimouski-La-Matapédia. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to congratulate my excellent colleague on his speech. Mr. Speaker, the government likes to repeat itself to create the impression that they're good. The Prime Minister at the press conference said, we're going to hire more officers for CBSA to make our borders safer. That was under American pressure. It wasn't their idea. And then they did another press conference to announce the same thing. They just keep announcing the same things over and over and over again, without actually going about hiring the people that CBS needs. So I'd like my colleague to explain, is this a government that's just going by the seat of their pants, or do they have a clear plan? The honourable member for Lac Saint Jean. Well, with C-12, it's obvious the government's saying, we need to do something quick. We need to look at what's going on at the border. It's important. It's urgent. We have to change things. We have to change the Immigration Act, the justice legislation, the Public Safety Act, because things are not going well. But they've been in power for years, 10 years, and they've just realized that there's a problem. It's not serious.